All right, Dog fans, here we go. It's time for yet another edition of Talkin' Huskies right here on Root Sports Northwest alongside producer Alex Altman and former Husky NFL tight end Cam Cleland. My name is Dave Softy Mahler. UW 2-0 after a 43-10 win over Tulsa on Saturday. Michigan State in East Lansing coming up this weekend. But Cam, before we get to the Spartans, a big one in the Big Ten, a future conference game this Saturday with Michigan State starting next year. Let's go back and talk about what we saw last Saturday versus Tulsa. 43-10 victory by UW. The Huskies have the ball 9 times in the game on Saturday. They score 6 touchdowns. They throw 1 pick in the end zone. They fumble 1 ball at the Michigan State 15 and miss a field goal. Outside of these self-inflicted wounds by UW, this could have been a 60-burger for the Dogs on Saturday, Cam.
Well, the good is you held a team to 10 points that could score a lot of points, and that is the good. The bad is we'll sit there and nitpick on some of the bad because when you're a top 10 team, you want to see total domination. Some of the bad was just the focus issues. The catches by the wide receivers, those miscues, the miscommunication, and there really wasn't any ugly because there's a team that can play and they can score anywhere. Throughout the entire game, we watched it. The energy was a little bit down, and that's part of the human factor of being a football player and the coaches. It's not excuses. It certainly is. And all these guys know they have to focus up and play hard, and nobody's looking by an opponent. But now that we're into Michigan State week, you got to travel to a Big Ten top opponent. It's a team that's going to be ready to play. It's going to be a hostile environment. How much have we heard about that? It's like this Husky team has never played in a hostile environment. Come on, man. They're going to understand it. They know it. But that game was what you were supposed to do, holding the team to 10. I thought the defense looked very, very good. There's certain elements that we need to focus on about how to get better. But yeah, injuries, a lot of things piled up, but that's a W in the end.
Yeah, let's go back and talk about some of those maybe focus issues on Saturday. This is now the second week in a row that we've heard the name Jalen McMillan in regards to maybe a little bit of a mental mistake. Ran the wrong route on the first drive of the game in week 1, obviously, and that led to a Michael Penix sack. And now this game for Jalen drops a wide open touchdown down the sideline and then fumbles the ball after a big gain that almost led to a fumble recovery touchdown for Tulsa, if not for Michael Penix making that tackle. Look, man, I don't mind Michael Penix running the ball. I don't want my quarterback making tackles, pal.
No, I don't want him any part of that. Somebody else go make the hit and the tackle. First, nobody's going to be harder on themselves than those wide receivers. Nobody in the building is going to be able to be any tougher mentally on them. Now, coaches can be upset. You can take this one of 2 ways. You can be the coach that just railroads it, gets upset, complains, or you can take the high road and say, hey, these guys, we need you down the road. Wide receivers, okay, this is going to be shocking to a lot of people. They are high maintenance because that's what they are. And they all know it, so I'm not saying anything that's not real. Take care of them. The egos are there. They have to play that way. They will make the big plays in the moments. But those situations, those are ones that those guys are going to regret because they're looking at their numbers and they're stat padding because they wanted that touchdown. And of course, Michael Penix needs those numbers if we're stacking up against all the guys across the country for the Heisman stuff. But this doesn't matter because we're trying to win football games and get to a Pac-12 championship and make the college football playoff. So that's priority number 1.
All of them bounced back, and they did that again Saturday. I'm certain that because of those mental miscues that we saw, Cam, in the game on Saturday versus Tulsa, we're going to see a much sharper version of those guys this Saturday versus Michigan State. But you mentioned the good. The Husky offense right now at 99 points the first 2 games of the year. They're tied for 8th in the country at scoring at 49.5 points per game. People out there want to know, though, what does this Husky football team do when they play somebody? And they got a shot to do that this Saturday versus Michigan State. Can they continue to put up the numbers they're putting up offensively, Cam, though, without a real run game? Cam Davis out for the year. Dylan Johnson, the transfer from Mississippi State, did not play in the game on Saturday versus Tulsa. How about the idea of using Jeremy Bernard at running back? Ryan Grubb, offensive coordinator for UW, talked about that idea earlier this week.
Super versatile guy. He's coming out of the backfield. He's running the football between the tackles and things like that. And Jerm's just a big, strong kid. You know, I mean, he certainly, if we want to make him a full-time running back, he could do that. You know, I'm not interested in doing that, but he certainly can line up back there and and take handoffs every game. So we're excited about that.
All right, obviously, you're in a tight situation, Cam, with those running backs. Let's first of all talk about the situation overall. Cam Davis out for the year. We'll see if Dylan Johnson plays this Saturday at Michigan State. Will Nixon, number 8, the transfer from Nebraska, clearly your number 1 guy as of right now. We've seen the Husky coaching staff under Chris Peterson, Jimmy Lake, and others make position switches when the situation calls for it. Remember John Ross playing corner back in the day at UW. Shaq Thompson playing running back in the day at Washington. How about the idea there, despite the fact that Grubber is kind of a little bit against it right now, of moving Jeremy Bernard to running back?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a farce, but that's not true because sometimes coaches can let a few things out. Look, the coach's job is to get the best athletes on the field at all times, and Jeremy Bernard is one of the best athletes on the team. Versatile, yes. How can you use him? Along with Jalen Polk, those guys are strong. You could see it. They have to be on the field in multiple formations and changes. But I think, guys, when we look at this, Dave, we have to get under the understanding that this team is a predominant passing football team. Okay? The dominant run game, the powerful 4 yards in a cloud of dust is not the realistic mindset of this team because it's just not who they are identity-wise. And that goes up to the O-line. The O-line played really well. But overall, should we expect 200 yards on the ground and that moving forward? I just don't see that because that's not who this team is and what they want to do because you have Michael Penix and the depth issues. We went into the season hoping that the running back situation was going to be very clear, and the only thing clear to me is that Will Nixon is number 1 right now.
No, there's no question. And this is a Husky football team that is 113th in the country in rushing yards, but they're also second fewest in the nation in rush attempts. There's only one team in the country, Cam, that's run the ball less than UW, and that's Colorado State, for crying out loud. So only 41 attempts so far. Can they get around that, though, with the quick passing game, the bubble screen? I actually asked Kalen DeBoer about that earlier this week, and he said, kinda, but in the end, we need to have a productive between the tackles run game, and I'm kind of with you. I don't know if they're going to have that as the year goes by from a traditional sense, but number 4 clearly showed that he's a guy who's a Swiss Army knife type of player. He needs to be on the field at all times, no matter what position the guy's playing, including this Saturday against his old team in Michigan State.
Yeah, absolutely, and this goes back to the O-line and their identity and what they're going to do, but again, you're on the road in Michigan State, you might have to run the ball late in the game and need it to control the clock. And if this team needs to do it, I think the coaching staff will get them ready for it.
Let's talk about that offensive line for a little bit. We saw a pretty good performance again when it comes to protecting Michael Penix on Saturday. This will be a bit of a different animal, obviously, against the Spartans this Saturday in East Lansing. We'll come back and chat about that. Big thanks again to our friends at the law offices of Catherine Clark for being here every week, supporting the show. More with Cam Cleland. My name is Dave Softy Mahler. Talking Huskies continues next right here on Root Sports Northwest. All right, Dawg fans, we're back here on Talkin' Huskies. Big thanks to our friends at Nordstrom Heating and Air for being here with us every week on the show. Cam, the offensive line through 2 weeks has been fairly productive when it comes to protecting number 9. The run game really hasn't done much, but that might be also a situation because of necessity with the injuries to the running backs. But how about some thoughts on the way the offensive line has played so far after 8 quarters, including the freshman Parker Brailsford at right guard?
Well, Parker Brailsford has been a huge surprise, and I think to those that have been in the program know that how good he is. He comes out of Arizona and starts at guard, and now with potentially there's a little bang up there with Mateo Mele. He went out with a small arm injury. We don't know what that will entail, but it could slide Parker Brailsford over to the center position, and then they got to make adjustments. But overall, okay, we use this statistic quite a bit, but Pro Football Focus does a good job of grading guys out. This team right now, as we in pass protection in the nation, is number 1 in the country. Number 1 in the country in grading for pass protection. 3 guys are in the top 16 in the country. So, however, the change is that they're number 30 in the conference when it comes to run production for blocking. So those are the things that, hey, the identity of this team right now is that they are excellent at pass protection, and Coach Huff needs to do that. You notice how when you only give up 7 sacks last year and 1 thus far, you're going to be really good at pass protection. The run game needs to get better, and that means the depth now has to step up with some potential injuries.
Yeah, no doubt. I would say that the majority of the problems for this football team are on the line of scrimmage. The defensive line has not been getting after the quarterback yet. Only 3 sacks so far, Cam, in a couple of games. That is tied for 103rd in the country. UW co-defensive coordinator Chuck Morrell gave us his thoughts on the pass rush after 2 games earlier this week.
Yeah, we're all over the quarterback. It's just a matter of getting him down on the ground, I think. And it's not that we're not there or missing sacks. I just think that people are leaving a lot of people in on protection right now. And I think you look at the number of pressures where the quarterback's not throwing on time, or he's throwing off his back foot, or he's getting knocked on the ground. We're really pleased with the percentages so far.
All right, so no Zion in the game on Saturday versus Tulsa. He should come back and play this Saturday versus Michigan State, but still waiting for Braylon Trice to erupt. The coaching staff has talked about the amount of max protection schemes they're seeing on the opposite side of the ball from the opposing offenses. What do you make of this pass rush, Cam, after 2 games?
Well, also, too, remember, is that Tulsa targeted Braylon Trice in the run game, and they ran left quite a bit. And how do you eliminate a pass rusher? You run at them. I mean, that's just been around for football forever. You don't give them opportunities in one-on-one. You saw in a blitz situation, they double-teamed Braylon Trice, and guess who made the tackle on a corner blitz was Jabbar Muhammad. So he comes off and gets the sack. But this is no Zion, so Sakai Asalafoa has to step in, and he's going to be one-on-one. If Zion is healthy and he comes back, which all ideas say that he's going to be back and have more pass rush and depth, but Voy Tanufi's going to have to get in there. But I'm sure Braylon is feeling that a little bit, and it is about scheme. Because if you run the football, and Tulsa ran the football very good, their offensive line was good, and they pushed on them, you're not going to get the amount of attempts to pass rush. And if you get early and you score fast with this offensive line and Michael Penix, then teams are playing from behind. They can't run the football, and that's when Braylon Trice can get loose.
Yeah, and let's talk about that secondary, because you mentioned Jabbar Muhammad, who had the sack earlier this week against Tulsa. Number one, solid at corner, no question. What about the other side? Kalen DeBoer admitting that, yes, there's a competition between Elijah Jackson right now and Devon Banks for the other starting corner spot. We may not even see Devon this Saturday versus Michigan State. We'll wait and see if he plays against the Spartans. But here we are in week 3. What do we make of the other side of that secondary next to number one?
Well, the depth has been as advertised. I know Asa went out with another potential arm injury or hand injury. Cam Fab steps up again. I mean, those two were classmates. They came in together. Cam has stepped up big time in the gap. Elijah played a little bit better this game, but Jabbar Muhammad is as advertised. Devon Banks goes out with that shoulder. We all looked at it and went, he went to the tent, and how they're going to manufacture that kid. Whatever they got to do to keep him on the field, that's great. But the depth overall, Dave, I think it's a huge upgrade considering last year. Mish Powell playing well, Dom Hampton back there, Roman making tackles. It's just the secondary is so much better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Jabbar Muhammad is everything so far as advertised. And this Saturday versus Michigan State, we'll see what kind of passing attack the Spartans come with. We're going to come back and talk, obviously, a lot more about Michigan State and what they bring to the table on Saturday. But just a quick preview, Cam. Peyton Thorne, the quarterback from last year who came to UW and lost, is now gone. Noah Kim, the junior, is the new starting quarterback, obviously, at Michigan State. But the big 10,000-pound elephant over that program right now is the Mel Tucker situation. We'll come back and talk about that, how it impacts potentially UW for Saturday's game in East Lansing next, right here on Talkin' Huskies. All right, Dawg fans, welcome back to Talkin' Huskies. Dave Softy-Mahler, rejoined now by former Husky NFL tight end Cam Cleland. Here every week, Talkin' Huskies right here on Root Sports Northwest. Big thanks, of course, to our sponsors, the law offices of Catherine Clark, and, of course, our pals over at Nordstrom Heating and Air. Cam, want to get your thoughts on the big story of the week involving this week's Husky opponent. Before we talk about what's happening on the field, let's talk about what's happening off the field. Mel Tucker, head coach at Michigan State, suspended because of a inappropriate phone relationship with Brenda Tracy. Kalen DeBoer, head coach at Washington, talked about dealing with that distraction before the game on Saturday.
I really am feeling like you don't make a big deal of it because again, it's going to be about the 100+ guys that they have on their team that are wanting to do something special, and they're going to be playing at home, trying to go 3-0 in an environment, as I've heard a couple times now here today, is hostile. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. And so I think, a lot of coaches on that staff have been there many years. The coordinators have been there all 4, that staff's been there. So, I think there'll be obviously some distractions that they have, but we can't let those distractions be ours.
All right, so we know that sometimes, Cam, teams rally around news like this, and sometimes it's a major distraction and they fall apart. Let's talk about UW's role in handling this story coming up on Saturday.
Coach DeBoer is right. You just do what you can control, is get your team ready for a long road trip in a tough environment, and the fans and all the things that you can handle. You certainly want no part of dealing with what Michigan State is and that whole situation. The players are going to be concerned. They're going to want to play football, the current coaching staff, all that stuff, distractions aside. They still have to have a game at 5 p.m. Eastern time and get it done. And that's all you can control at this point. None of the guys want to sit there and focus on it. I know it's going to be a media uproar. It's our job to talk about it and figure out what's going to make the difference. But in the end, it's going to come down to kickoff at 5 o'clock and see who these guys are ready to play. And I guarantee you Michigan State will be ready to play.
Yeah, the atmosphere should be rocking on Saturday in East Lansing. Harlan Bennett, who was the former Florida State defensive coordinator, who's now the secondary coach at Michigan State. He will be coaching Michigan State on Saturday. Mark D'Antonio, the former head coach, longtime head coach, Cam at Michigan State, will be there on the sidelines. The 2013 Rose Bowl team at Michigan State will be honored this Saturday, so he would have been there anyway. But a little bit of a different-looking Michigan State team than the one that we saw a year ago. Peyton Thorne came to Washington. He then transferred to Auburn. Noah Kim, the junior, is now the starter at Michigan State. He was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week last week after the Spartans win over Richmond. And a transfer running back in Nate Carter from UConn is averaging, he's run for over 225 yards in the first 2 games of the year. So when it comes to this Michigan State offense, what's the big concern, you think, for the Husky defense on Saturday?
It's all run game. All of it. And that's where it starts. It starts at, number one, controlling the football, not making a lot of mistakes. And Nathan Carter is going to be that guy that's going to be a bell cow power back. They're going to run behind their offensive line. They're doing the same thing that when they came out to Husky Stadium last year. They wanted to pound the ball. But it was the explosiveness of Trey Mosley that really was scary, and he's on the outside at wide receiver. Now with Noah Kim, what he can do is he's athletic. He's also, again, another dual threat quarterback that can run. We're going to say that all season long for the Huskies in every opponent they play. So what does that mean? You got to play good defense. You got to find a way to get off the field and be explosive on offense for us, because that puts a lot of fear in the opposing team's offense.
Yeah, first time the Huskies have played on grass, obviously, and there is not a grass field, Cam, on campus at UW for the Huskies to practice on. Kalen DeBoer was actually asked about that earlier this week, because you remember last year at Arizona State, at UCLA, the Huskies did have some issues on grass. Kalen mentioned that they are going to find a grass surface somewhere to practice on. He's not letting out where they're going, doesn't want weirdos like you and I showing up and taking pictures and all that, but I assume a local high school stadium somewhere. We'll come back and wrap it up and talk about Michael Penix against this Michigan State Spartan football team. This is not his first rodeo against Michigan State. That's next on Talkin' Huskies. All right, Dawg fans, back here on Talkin' Huskies. Dave Softy-Mahler, Cam Cleland, producer Alex Altman here every week talking Dogs. About ready to wrap it up for another week. Michigan State on Saturday. Be back next week recapping everything we see against the Spartans this Saturday. But Cam, we mentioned this heading into the break. Michael Penix Jr., this is not his first rodeo whatsoever against Michigan State. First of all, Michael Penix, after 2 games, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, 73%. 859 yards, is number 4 in the country versus Tulsa last week. Another kind of ho-hum game for him, right? 28 for 38, 409, 3 touchdowns and the interception. But this is now his 4th game versus Michigan State, going back to 2019 at Spartan Stadium, a 40-31 loss, which, by the way, was tied at 31 with 2 minutes to go. 2020, he goes back to Spartan Stadium and wins 24-0 and throws for 320, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. And then last year at Husky Stadium, 24 of 40, 397, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Michigan State wakes up after seeing Michael Penix in their nightmares, and they'll see him again this weekend, babe.
Well, I don't know how they're going to defend him, but they're going to do everything they can. And I said this during the broadcast, this offense is terrifying for a defense to try to defend. You cannot pass rush it because you can throw hot and throw all over the place. Guys, shifts, motions, the way they make adjustments, the way they use their backs, the way they use their wide receivers from the first play of the game. Tulsa had no idea what was going on. So, yeah, you got to prepare a lot for Michael Penix. Looks comfortable. He looks more balanced. His throws are better. Everything, there's a lot of confidence going in this game, as it should be. But it's a road game, and you mentioned on grass, and those 2 losses last year were on grass. It doesn't matter. It's just a surface. Play football, and it'll be all right.
Yeah, let's talk about those injuries, though, because there are 4 big ones that we won't know much about likely until game day. Asa Turner at safety, Devon Banks at corner, Dylan Johnson running back, and then obviously Zion, who missed the game, ZTF, last Saturday against Tulsa. Those are 4 pretty important guys for this weekend's game versus Sparty, pal.
Yeah, they are. Sakai Salafo is going to have to step up on the outside, maybe a lot more rotation and how the defensive situation goes in the backfield. I like the defensive backs, that situation. Mateo Mele, they can move Parker Brailsford over. Julius Bulow played very good with his pass protection. I believe we have good depth right now, but that's why you have it 2 deep. Guys have to step up, figure it out, especially when you're on the road.
Big game for both teams on Saturday, no doubt. UW, number 8 in the country, will put their 2-0 record on the line versus Michigan State Saturday at 2 o'clock Pacific time. For producer Alex Altman, Cam Cleland, my name is Dave Softy-Mahler. Thanks again for hanging out with us on Talkin' Huskies. We'll see you next week right here on Root Sports Northwest.